Guten Tag. Wir haben, äh, wir haben begonnen, die Adjektivdeklination auf Deutsch zu lernen. We have begun to learn the adjective endings in German. Und heute möchten wir die Adjektivdeklination im Detail lernen. Wir machen heute eine Tabelle, eine ganz umfangreiche Tabelle, und mit dieser Tabelle können Sie die Adjektivdeklination lernen. Ja, das ist, so today's class is basically going to be, we are going to try and make a comprehensive table of adjective endings, which will give an overview of most of the cases, most of the instances of adjective endings in German. Just as a brief introduction, again, adjectives are not inflected in the English language. I mean, when we speak English, we realize that when we let's say use an adjective such as good for a person, whether the person is masculine, feminine, whether we use the adjective good for an object that is neuter or a concept that is abstract, it doesn't make a difference. Okay, it is always a good boy, a good girl, a good idea, or good food, etc. So it doesn't change according to gender, it doesn't change according to the case, whether the good boy is the subject or whether I see the good boy is the object in the sentence. It doesn't make a difference. The good remains, the adjective good remains the way it is. So it is not inflected, and one of the reasons perhaps is that the gender distinction in English is quite obvious. Okay, and we have seen that the gender distinction in German is not that obvious. It is, when we learn new nouns in German, we have to learn the new noun along with its article, and in fact also along with its plural. Okay, so since genders are not so obvious in German, adjectives get inflected when they are used. Okay, it is also, I mean, one of the things that I always point out while doing this is, if you look at many Indian languages, I mean, at least the two Indian languages that I speak quite well, Marathi and Hindi, for example, there also you find that adjectives are inflected. In Hindi, for example, if I use the word acha for good, then the acha will change its ending in several instances. For example, for just plain ladka, it will be acha ladka. For ladki, it will be achhi ladki. If it is plural, ladke, it will be achhe ladke. But if it is feminine plural, ladkiyan, it will be achhi ladkiyan, and so on and so forth. And even in terms of the case, it will change. अच्छा लड़का स्कूल जाता है या स्कूल नहीं जाता है, whatever. Okay, अच्छा लड़का स्कूल जाता है. मैंने अच्छे लड़के को किताब भेंट की. Okay, when the लड़का becomes dative, it becomes अच्छे लड़के को. Okay, so the inflection of the adjective ending, so declension of adjectives is not a very unusual phenomenon if we look at our own languages, and we find this in German as well. And so we have seen, for example, in the previous classes we have seen ich suche zum Beispiel ein elegantes Restaurant, das Restaurant, it's neuter, das Restaurant. Wir suchen ein elegantes Restaurant, wir suchen ein elegantes Restaurant oder ein gutes Hotel, das Hotel. So ein gutes Hotel. But if it is the old man is looking for a good restaurant or looking for something, then the old man, in German is der Mann, der alte Mann. But if it is an old man, so der alte Mann. If it is an old man, then an old man is ein alter Mann. Ein alter Mann. So ein gutes Hotel, ein elegantes Restaurant, ein alter Mann, der alte Mann. So there are several ways in which adjectives get inflected, and while we saw some of the examples in the exercises that we did yesterday and the texts that we read in the previous class, today we will only make for ourselves a table which will kind of give us a snapshot of most of the adjective endings in the German language. So the adjective endings depend primarily on three factors. One is of course the gender of the noun. The German language has three genders, masculine, feminine, neuter. The other factor is whether the noun concerned is a definite, it has a definite article or an indefinite article, the old man or an old man, a good restaurant or the good restaurant to which we went, whether it is a specific thing or unspecific, indefinite article, whether the noun has an article at all. Okay. So old people, for example, or young people. Here you only have the adjective, junge Leute, alte Leute. You have only adjectives without any articles. So it depends on the gender, it depends on the definite, indefinite. You can also have the possessive articles, for example, my favorite book, or my favorite restaurant, or my expensive smartphone. Okay. So you can have a possessive article or a possessive pronoun also as an article. In German, we also have the negative article, which is kein, which we've learnt. Okay. So to negate nouns, we use the negative article kein. So it depends on all these factors: gender, definite, indefinite, possessive, no article, negative article. It also depends on the number, that is whether it is singular or plural. Okay. So for example, old man and old men, in English the old is the same, but in German it will be different. Ein alter Mann is an old man, but alte Männer with an E ending would be old men. So it depends on gender, number, definite, indefinite, possessive, negative, all these factors. So we're going to try and make a table or a series of tables which will give us an overview over most of these factors on which the adjective endings depend. Okay. So we can start with the definite article. We can start with the definite article. Definite article, articles in German are masculine is der, feminine is die, and neuter is das. Okay. And then we take simple nouns, just so that, so we'll continue with the old man, der alte Mann. We'll take die alte Frau, and we can't take das alte Kind, so we'll take das kleine Kind. Okay, so we'll take these as our basic examples of nouns, der alte Mann, die alte Frau, das kleine Kind. What you have to remember is that this particular scheme of adjective endings will apply to all masculine nouns. Whatever applies to der alte Mann applies to all masculine nouns. Whatever applies to die alte Frau applies to all feminine nouns, and whatever applies to das kleine Kind applies to all neuter nouns. Okay. So, let us begin this exercise and try and finish it in today's session. So, we will make the first table with the definite articles. We shall make masculine, feminine, and neuter, and we will separate them according to cases. So, we have the nominative case, the accusative case, the dative case. There is also a fourth case which we have not yet done, which is the genitive case, Genitiv, der Genitiv, Genitiv oder Possessiv. So, we will take the form of that as well, just in the table, and you can learn it later. So, when I say, and we say masculine neuter, masculine nominative, der, masculine accusative, den, masculine dative, dem, masculine genitive, des. Der alte Mann, den alten Mann, dem alten Mann, and des, again alten Mannes. Des alten Mannes basically has the meaning something like of the old man. We, as I said, it's a possessive case. We have not covered it yet, so you can leave it there, and we will come to it whenever we do the genitive or the possessive case later on in the course. Okay, so this is what the adjective endings look like for masculine singular definite article. Der alte Mann, den alten Mann, dem alten Mann, des alten Mannes. What this means is, if we have to use the word the old man, if the word or the phrase the old man comes in a German sentence as a nominative, then we say der alte Mann. Der alte Mann sucht ein gutes Restaurant. Der alte Mann sucht ein gutes Restaurant. Or der alte Mann braucht Hilfe. Der alte Mann braucht Hilfe, needs help. Okay. Den alten Mann, if the phrase the old man, if the old man appears in a sentence as an accusative object, for example, ich höre, I can hear, I hear the old man, I see the old man, it's the direct object in the sentence. Then ich höre den alten Mann, ich sehe den alten Mann. Suppose I show the old man a good restaurant. Then the old man here is the dative object. I show the old man a good restaurant. Then you have the old man come into the sentence as the dative object. Then to show, zeigen, zeigen to show, ich zeige dem alten Mann ein gutes Restaurant. Ich zeige dem alten Mann. So what sentence would be, the verb we used was zeigen, which is to show, and the sentence we just made was ich zeige dem alten Mann ein gutes Restaurant. Ich zeige dem alten Mann ein gutes Restaurant. We have a standard NDA sentence here, nominative, dative, accusative. Ich is the subject, nominative, zeige is the verb. Ich zeige was, ein gutes Restaurant is the accusative. Ich zeige wem ein gutes Restaurant, dem alten Mann is our dative object. That is what the table means. Okay, that is wherever a masculine singular noun with a definite article appears in a sentence in the dative case, this is the form that will tell you what the adjective ending will be. Dem alten Mann. Okay. Des alten Mannes, that we will do later. Similarly, if you have nominative feminine singular die, so we have die alte Frau. Feminine singular accusative, is there a change in the article? There is no change in the article. So it remains die alte Frau, and feminine singular becomes in the dative case der alten Frau, and in the genitive case the feminine singular remains der alten Frau. Yeah, this we can come back to later. So die alte Frau, der alten Frau, der alten Frau. Again, what this means is, if the old woman, the phrase the old woman is appearing in a sentence, and if the old woman is the subject or the nominative, we use the old woman in German. I mean, the phrase becomes die alte Frau. If die alte Frau is accusative object, it stays die alte Frau. But in our example, for example, if I were to show, instead of the old man, the old woman, instead of the old man, suppose I were to show the old woman a good restaurant, it would be ich zeige der alten Frau ein gutes Restaurant. Okay, this is what it means. This is what our table basically tells us, that if a feminine noun, singular feminine, in the dative case with a definite object, then we have this form here, der alten Frau. Similarly, neuter gender nominative is das kleine Kind, das kleine Kind. It doesn't change. The neuter gender in the accusative case does not change. Das remains das. And like the masculine, the neuter also becomes, in the dative case, dem kleinen Kind and des, Verzeihung, des kleinen Kindes. Okay, I think basically the idea should be clear now what exactly our table is going to tell us. This is the first basic table. masculine, feminine, neuter, 3 nouns with their respective adjectives in the 4 cases with a definite article. Now we all know, we should know by now definitely, that the gender distinction and the separate articles for the different genders, this holds good only in the singular. In the plural, all nouns, irrespective of their gender, have a common article which is D. We will remove this example from here so that our table can continue. So whatever we do in the plural, again we will need the 4 cases, but we can take one common example for all 3. Let's take the alte Frau, and we have nominative, accusative, dative and genitive, and this will apply to all nouns irrespective of gender and gender. So a D, it's all D, Alten, Frauen, den alten Frauen and der alten Frauen. Again, just to reiterate, what this table basically means is that if a feminine noun or any noun, not just a feminine, but it would be, for example, for Mann it would be the alten Männer, die alten Männer, Dativ Plural, den alten Männern with an additional N, and der alten Männer. Okay. Similarly, for Kind it would be die kleinen Kinder, den kleinen Kindern, an additional N at the end of the dative plural, and der kleinen Kinder. So if these nouns which we have seen here, if they were to appear in a sentence in the plural, then if nominative, this is what we use. For accusative, this is the form. For dative, this is the form, and for genitive, as you can see, it's a common en or n ending, okay, for all of them. So this is our table for the definite article. Der, die, das, Mann, Frau, Kind, and die for all, die Frauen, die Männer, die Kinder for all 3 together. Okay. I hope by now, ich hoffe, Sie verstehen die Adjektivdeklination, was das ist. Das ist nämlich, dass die Adjektive in der deutschen Sprache, ja, die Adjektive in der deutschen Sprache haben jedes Mal können jedes Mal eine andere Endung haben, und diese Endung, diese Adjektivendung ist abhängig von, dependent on, abhängig von is depends on or dependent on, ist abhängig von vielen Faktoren, zum Beispiel bestimmt oder unbestimmt, die Zahl, also Singular oder Plural, Genus, maskulin, Neutrum oder feminin und so weiter. Ja? Also, es ist am besten, wenn wir die Adjektivendungen oder diese Tabelle einfach auswendig lernen. Okay, what I'm trying to say is that we are, after all, learning German as a foreign language. Okay, and we don't really get too much opportunity to speak German every day. And one of the things that we need to do in certain with certain grammatical elements is learn things by heart. And one of the things that I have found very, very useful, because when we learned German way back in school, we were asked to learn quite a few things by heart, as those who have remember your school days will know. And so we learnt the entire adjective declension table by heart. I mean, we actually went back home and we recited der alte Mann, den alten Mann, dem alten Mann, des alten Mannes, die alte Frau, der alten Frau, der alten Frau, das kleine Kind, dem kleinen Kind, des kleinen Kindes. Okay, and this, once this gets fixed in our mind, then it is useful in examinations. So please do learn this table by heart. It's quite useful. Again, this is, we can see that in spoken German, in colloquial, everyday exchange, conversations, people are not very strict about observing each and every grammar rule. So you might find several instances where adjective endings might not exactly correspond to the table that you have learned by heart, but that is the way it happens. That's the way language is, because language varies in conversation quite a bit. But as adjective endings, we need to learn these. So this is the definite article table, yeah, which means, since I am being so specific about it, obviously means that there is also an indefinite article table, which we will do now. Indefinite articles are ein, so we have ein, alter Mann, and we have eine, alte Frau, and we would have ein kleines Kind. Standard indefinite article. Examples, we make the same table. We have masculine, we need to draw the table quickly. We have masculine, we have feminine and neuter, and we have the 4 cases: nominative, accusative, dative, and genitive, masculine, feminine und neutrum, masculine, nominative, ein, alter Mann. Accusative, as we know, becomes einen, alter will change to alten Mann, einem, alten Mann, and this is eines, alten Mannes. Feminine, nominative, eine alte Frau. Akkusativ ist das Gleiche, eine alte Frau. Dativ, feminin, einer, die, der, eine, einer. alten Frau und Genitiv bleibt auch einer alten Frau. Neutrum, Nominativ, ein kleines Kind. Bleibt das Gleiche, auch im Akkusativ, ein kleines Kind, einem kleinen Kind und eines kleinen Kindes. There are many things that we can't reason out in language, but if one were to reason out a few things, such as, for example, as far as definite articles go, der, die, das, they have the clear function of distinguishing between the gender. So you will find that in the beginning, in the first case, all the endings are common because the difference is being shown by the definite article, der, die, das. When we come to the indefinite article, we find that eine alte Frau is of course separate, it is clear, but ein Mann and ein Kind, Mann and Kind have the same indefinite article, ein Mann, ein Kind. This is where the adjective takes over the function of showing the distinction in gender. Okay, so ein alter Mann, ein kleines Kind. I mean, if one were to attempt an explanation. Once it becomes einen, well, there is only one situation in which you can have einen, which is indefinite masculine singular accusative case, so it does not matter. Okay. So this is the table for the indefinite singular, ein alter Mann, einen alten Mann, einem alten Mann und eines alten Mannes, eine alte Frau, einer alten Frau, einer alten Frau, ein kleines Kind, einem kleinen Kind, eines kleinen Kindes. Wäre gut, wenn Sie diese Tabelle, wie gesagt, auswendig lernen würden. Indefinite article ein appears only in the singular, it cannot have a plural. So its plural actually is without article. If you have an old woman, then you cannot have an old women, you just have old women, or a small child and small children. In the plural, the article will drop out. So indefinite singular, ein, eine. In the plural, they are without article. So we will take one example that is kleine Kinder, and our four cases N, A, D and G. N, A, D and G. We haben hier Nominativ, Plural, kleine Kinder oder alte Männer oder alte Frauen, kleine Kinder. Akkusativ bleibt kleine Kinder. Dativ, Plural, n plus n, kleinen Kindern oder alten Männern oder alten Frauen. Genitiv der Kinder, kleiner Kinder. So we have now are 4 basic components of the table, of the adjective declension table. The first one we did was the definite article singular, masculine, feminine, neuter, der, die, das, definite article plural, die. Then we moved on to indefinite article singular, ein, eine, ein. And we said that the indefinite article in the plural is without article, ohne Artikel. So this is a basic table. We will quickly look at other instances. As we said, die Adjektivdeklension ist abhängig von. We did that phrase today. Abhängig von, depends on, von vielen Faktoren. Also wir können ein kleines Kind haben oder auch mein kleines Kind haben, oder meine kleinen Kinder oder meine alten Eltern, etc. Okay. So mein, dein, sein, ihr, unser, euer. These are our possessive articles, plus we have also kein as our negative article. All of these im Singular wie ein, eine, ein. That means if the noun is singular, then all the possessive articles and the negative article kein will function in terms of adjective declension, in terms of Adjektivdeklination, like the indefinite articles ein, eine, and ein. So my old man would be mein alter Mann. My small child would be mein kleines Kind, and so on and so forth. Und im Plural wie der, not der, die, das, wie die. So the possessive articles as well as the negative article kein, in the singular, their adjective endings will be exactly like those of the indefinite article in all cases, and in the plural they will be like the definite article in all cases. So for example, in the plural, indefinite is kleine Kinder, the ending is e. But if I want to say my small children, so small children is, let's take small child, a small child, or my small child. A small child in German we said was ein kleines Kind. My small child will also be mein kleines Kind. Okay, the kleines for mein will be the same as the kleines for ein. Yeah, I'm saying this because the small child, we must remember, is das kleine Kind. Yeah? So, mine will not work like das, it will work like ein. Okay, ein kleines Kind, mein kleines Kind in the singular. The plural of this would be, a small child would be small children, small children, the small children, the small children with a definite article would be kleine Kinder, die kleinen Kinder. Okay. So, what happens to my small children? Meine, whether it will behave like indefinite or definite. It will behave like definite. Meine kleinen Kinder. Okay. That is what we said when we wrote mein, dein, sein, ihr, unser, euer, all these possessive articles, the adjective endings for them in the singular are like the indefinite article, like those of the indefinite article, ein, eine, ein, and in the plural they are all like the die or the definite article. Yeah? And the same is the case with the negative article kein. So, for example, ein interessantes Buch, kein interessantes Buch, singular, das ist singular, ja. Plural wäre interesting books, ja, interessante Bücher, aber keine, nicht interessante, sondern keine interessanten Bücher. Okay, that is what it means, that the negative article kein, das ist im Plural, ja, das ist Plural. Kein in the singular works like ein, but keine in the plural works like die kleinen Kinder. Okay. So, to wrap up this session of the basic forms of adjective declension, we haben hier 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 Tabellen. Bitte lernen Sie das auswendig. Es ist am besten. It's the best if you learn it by heart, and then it's almost like knowing the phrase die alte Frau, der alten Frau, and then applying it wherever. But as I said, this is more useful in terms of written German. In spoken German, of course, many a time you're not very particular about a specific adjective ending and so on and so forth. And I think even in spoken English, we make grammatical mistakes very often. It doesn't hamper the effectiveness of the communication mostly. Same holds true for German as well. But while learning a foreign language, we have to also kind of learn the grammar correctly. So that is why we are doing this. So this is the table for the definite article singular, definite article plural, indefinite singular, indefinite plural, which is equivalent to no article. Okay. And then we have the possessive articles and the negative article kein. They behave in the singular like the indefinite articles and the plural like the definite ones. This is a very basic overview of the adjective declination, and as we go along in our lectures ahead, in our classes ahead, we will come across other instances. I mean, you can also have the singular without an article. I mean, I need fresh air. I can't have a class in this air conditioned room. I need fresh air. Fresh air is the air as a noun has only the adjective fresh ahead of it, doesn't have an article. Luft, die Luft, feminine, die Luft, die frische Luft, the fresh air, or simply frische Luft, fresh air. Okay, kaltes Wasser, das kalte Wasser, aber kaltes Wasser. Okay, so these you can also have nouns without any articles, even in the singular. Those forms of the adjective endings we can do later on. For now, these forms, please try and learn them as you go along. Keep this table handy and try and understand what the table means. And if you have, of course, any doubts about any of the things we have said, you can get back to me in future sessions and get those clarified. Okay. Gut, also, bis zum nächsten Mal. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Ja, bis zum nächsten Mal. Auf Wiedersehen.